Imagine that you set down a stool in some random part of London in very ordinary surroundings, and you wrote a question on a piece of paper, a question that invites significant personal disclosure. You put the question into an envelope, place the envelope on the stool, set up a camera, and then invite random passers-by to sit on the stool, remove the question from the envelope, and answer it to a stranger on camera. That's what C.K. Goulding does twice a week. So this time, we put him on the stool.
Oh, I wasn't. Oh, right. Okay. So this is how we're doing this. I thought I would describe myself as quiet. I spend an inordinate proportion of my day, stroke life, in my head. What am I doing in my head? What am I thinking about? Everything. Humans, their behaviour, my behaviour, ideas, creative opportunities. I do get people. It's interesting. I do get people better and quicker than the average human, I would say. Maybe that's why I can sometimes find people insufferable. But mostly, I love humans. I engage strangers because, well, as an extension of my last answer, I am fascinated by people. I'm fascinated by the commonalities amongst us. That's what intrigues me, the commonalities amongst us. And I remember once I heard someone say, there are few things in life more predictable than human nature. And I'm afraid I entirely agree with that. It's very, very rare to be shocked, for me to be shocked by people, because given certain circumstances, you can almost perfectly predict how someone is going to react. And I keep talking about people as though I'm not one of them. I am. So I'm the same. I'm predictable. If you're into pattern recognition and you're really interested in patterns of the world and patterns of people, once you start seeing the patterns, you'll never unsee them. So I engage. Why do I engage strangers? Because I enjoy learning something about people, about myself, and deepening my understanding of how people think is an ongoing quest for me. So that's why I engage strangers. I hope that my films, I've only ever had one answer to this. Anytime I release something, the answer has always been the same. I hope my films make people feel something. What might that something be? Recognition. I always say, if somebody watches an episode of Passing People and they recognize themselves, or they recognize an emotion or a sentiment or a thought that one of the passing people is articulating, that for me is utopia, for people to recognize themselves in an episode or in anything I've ever made. To feel something and to recognize something, and I win. What most surprised me about shooting Passing People was, this is a really interesting question, and I'm glad you've asked it, because it gives me an opportunity to go back to the first day I set off to shoot episode 1 and what I was thinking. There's never been a time that I've anything I've made in the past, whether it's been the bench, 61 hugs, there's never been a time when I've doubted that something beautiful, something surprising, something beautiful or something surprising was going to happen. There was never any moment when I thought nobody's going to be interested in this. Or even if there was, I quickly knew based on pattern recognition there was no evidence to support that. If you go out and you engage with people in a very generous, warm way, very generous, warm, human way, you will always receive that back times 10. So because I know I'm a warm person and I engage people and I'm just a natural manner, there was never a part when I thought people were going to tell me to do one. I knew that not everybody would be into the idea, but I knew that people would be open to sharing because evidence has suggested that as humans, pack animals, community creatures, we seek that connection. We don't always get it. In fact, I would argue we almost seldom get it, which is why I think people are willing to sit on the stool and share. It's almost like they've been starved of that connection, which is wired into our DNA. So my understanding of that need for connection is why I thought, yeah, passing people will probably work on some level. So what have I been surprised by? Well, I wasn't necessarily expecting a gentleman in episode 2, the prompt for which, if I could erase one memory, it would be, I wasn't expecting a gentleman to talk about how at the age of 9 he watched his dad being attacked and his dad subsequently died. I did know that something profound and something deep and something impactful would present itself eventually. I wasn't necessarily expecting something that grave. So that surprised me. And in a future episode, the prompt of which was I sometimes struggle with, one young gentleman, his immediate answer was self-loathing. And he expands into how, and I'll never forget this quote, there aren't enough sorries in the world to make up for some of the things I've done. That episode at the time of this hasn't been released, but the level of disclosure he went into was astounding. So they're 2 surprises. And this happens all the time. You would never understand how often I'm having to reset the vase.